Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Connected Live. I did one earlier this week, and yes, you can tell by my clothing and my headband. It is a cold day in Oklahoma. I've been outside with the animals all morning, and I'm back in my cozy little office, deciding to do some work. I posted a little bit before about what kind of topics would people like to hear about today. And Elizabeth was nice enough to post about every day. Animal communication is not something that you do once in a while. It is something that you practice daily. It is, people even have trouble listening to themselves. Most people don't know what active listening is. Most people don't know what emotional literacy is. Most people don't know what the specific skills that go with communication, what they are, like active listening, the skill of turning the questions back to the audience when you have a opposition, somebody opposing your point of view when you're doing a speaking engagement. And it can even happen when you're speaking with one individual. And so this is all stuff that I've studied in human behavior. And years ago when I started my practice, I coined the phrase ELA, Emotional Literacy for Animals. And I applied all the concepts of emotional literacy with communication skills that I use for humans, and then used that to communicate with animals within the context of their species. And also understanding psychology and behavior of the animals that I was dealing with. So you have to look at the species, you have to look at their background, you have to look at the individual, you have to look at the personality, breed. Everything has to be looked at. You can't just say, oh, I specialize in behavior. Well, what does that mean? Do you understand psychology? Do you understand the species that you're working with? Do you understand the individual? That's where people like me come in far beyond what a behaviorist can do. And that does not mean I'm saying I replace a behaviorist. It says I add a whole new layer to things. So when we talk about a daily practice with animal communication, I always say to people, yes, they understand more than you think they do. Yes, they have a lot of wisdom to share, but like us, they are here to learn and have this third dimension, if you will, experience. So they're not all knowing and they're not perfect, and we don't know more than them and they don't know more than us on a regular basis. The relationship should be a collaborative one of equal exchange and listening. And in order to do that, you have to be devoid of attachment. You have to really drop your guard on your ego or release your ego. You have to really be able to kind of look at yourself very clearly in the mirror. And I'll give an example of this. A Buddhist monk who was a Geshe-la level that escaped Tibet when China invaded with the Dalai Lama, befriended me before he passed away. And one of the things he said to me was, you're such a beautiful spirit. He said I had been a student of his in a former life. I'm not Buddhist, by the way. I was there supporting a person who was becoming Buddhist. He told me he knew I wasn't supposed to be Buddhist, but I had been a student of his before, and how happy he was to see me. He only spoke Tibetan, and there was a translator between us, and I was gobsmacked and beyond. And I did feel a connection and a closeness to this old man that I can't explain, because I'm an extremely private person and I always have my guard up. And with him, it was just like bleh, which is very unusual for me. I just talked with him and listened. And one of the things he says, you're a dakini. And I said, what's that? And he said, people either really love you and resonate with you, or they really dislike you intensely. And I laughed and I said, yeah, my whole life I've noticed that, and I can't pinpoint it. And he said, because you're a mirror. You don't try to be a mirror, but you are a mirror, and you force people to see themselves. Even when you're not trying, you force people to see themselves. And if they are in integrity with themselves, then they like what they see and they like you. But if they're not, they will really dislike you for it, and they will hate you because they are not able to look at themselves with clarity. And he said, it is not something you are aware of. It's not something you try to do. It is a function of why you are here. So when I bring this issue up of being a mirror, you have to really be able to look at yourself and not get your back up and not defend who you are, why you are, but just listen. If you are a confident person coming from love and confidence, you are comfortable taking feedback, any kind of feedback. I'm not saying that things won't ever anger you when you encounter injustice or you encounter someone totally off their rocker. But even somebody totally off their rocker and delusional and that has malice towards you has something to teach. And so that's why people will look at me and say, why are you as good as you are at what you do? Because of a lot of that. That's some of the few components. So I always tell people, in order to do animal communication effectively, just work with me. I'll help you either be able to do it effectively or you're going to reject it. And like I talked about in a previous Connected Live, I have a former client now that is using my language, lifting my work, and doing so with platitudes that are very ineffective, and not too worried about it, but definitely had to call it out, because anybody using my paradigm, my language, including taking a name that was meant for the horse sanctuary and focused, it was like a name that kind of circled back to my work because of Arrow for the horse sanctuary for his kin. So anybody blatantly doing stuff like that, that we have a problem with. That's not an integrity. So I get people to really wake up, and it's their choice, it's free will. But most people who work with me really wake up, and the best feedback I get from a client when I work with them on animal communication is, yeah, stuff really works. And they'll say, I can hear my cat, or I can hear my bird now. Am I nuts? And I said, no, that's why you came to me, we did a healing session for their animal, and part of a healing session doing the connected energy work is to make individuals conscious of their connection, which then creates quality of life for both the person and the animal companion. So when we do this, it requires probably working with me for a little bit. And once you've got it, it's a daily practice. You'll find that going to a bar or going to a store promoting animal readings, would y'all go to a doctor or a lawyer who said, hey, come for a free reading or for $49.99 or whatever, come to a bar or a coffee shop and I'll give you free legal advice or free medical advice? I have to laugh because you won't, whoever is doing stuff like this, it's a very old paradigm, and it creates and solidifies an old way of doing things, which continues to make animal communication look like an entertainment rather than part of a whole bunch of combination of things that create health for the owner, the person, and their animal. Animal communication should not be an event, should not be an entertainment, but should actually be something that you pursue in order to see, where are you guys right now? Like, what's your baseline? And part of the animal communication work that I do creates the baseline. Where are we at? What does the animal want to communicate about? So a lot of people have an agenda. I've heard everything from, what color collar does my dog want? And it takes a lot of patience on my part, and I'm so happy I don't do visual with people, because if by the rolling of my eyes ever since childhood on stuff like anything like that is not good. So I roll my eyes and then I explain. That's not inherent to the session. Sometimes I'll get a color preference, but that's not the point of animal communication. It's so much bigger than that. If you have a rescue, it can really help you not only understand the breed you're dealing with, the species you're dealing with, and the individual, because we get into the psychology of the individual we're dealing with. It can help you hear what it is they're trying to let you know. Case in point, I rescue Arrow, and this horse would not stop. His whole thing was, I'm important. They're looking for me. I'm important. I mean, he would not stop. He also used keywords like, I'm not a throwaway. I'm important. And, how do you find the home and the origins of a horse with no papers who's a senior? And, your sales slip is, on a napkin. It's because the horse led me to information that would help me find his origins, which then I moved to Oklahoma because the horse wanted to move home. It was the least I could do for him because the horse actually has a mission and purpose. His whole deal is to have his kin properly protected and for him to be an ambassador for that herd that is run by Bryant Rickman, that is endangered, protected in Oklahoma. They're called the Oklahoma Heritage Horses. They are featured in the movie Hidalgo, as well as the Disney animated film Cimarron. Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron. Always get that one twisted up. And these horses are so important because now that I've delved into it, 5 years after Arrow's rescue, these horses are as important to not only Oklahoma, but to the nation. They are as important as the Grand Canyon. They're as important as Yellowstone National Park. They are the original horses that are genetically tested going back to the Spanish conquistadors, and there's only 300 left. And there's this 70-year-old cowboy tending to them with no resources, and people just most of the time not doing the right thing. And we need a proper reserve. We need a museum. We need a place where people can make reservations, and not only Americans can come see for generations to come, but Europeans, people all around the world. I mean, Oklahoma has such a massive opportunity. So if there are business people out here listening to me, this is the importance of the mission and purpose of Arrow through animal communication. Contact Bryant Rickman directly, by the way. He's got a 501c3. All the money goes to the horses. Besides that, and Rescue Me Incorporated, not many 501c3s I'll endorse. I sit on the board of directors for Rescue Me Incorporated out of Los Angeles. But Bryant's really does the right thing. And I'm really just a voice for Arrow, a human voice in a human world run by humans, was what I mean by that. And daily communication, that never changes. That is the mission and purpose. But the daily communication with Arrow is, he's 29 years old, folks. He wants to do this 25-mile race in February. But this crazy weather we're having, one day it's 70, the next day it's 20. He's 29. He's like a 90-year-old man. And he is trying so hard. He gets all the right supplements, all the right feed, all the right training. But his body was ravaged by humans. He's got scars all over him. And he's old, and he was not well taken care of. So he's really struggling. There are days that he's just like, game on, mama, we're doing it. And then there are days he's like, I just can't. I just don't want to work this hard anymore. I don't have it. And I have to listen to him daily, because here I am prepping for this race on the 15th of February for 25 miles. I'm not sure we're going to go. I'm planning on going. I have all the resources in place to go. But if that horse tells me the day of the race, it's a bad day. I can't do it. Guess what? Despite my expectations of preparation for the whole thing, that doesn't mean anything to me. What matters to me is his health, our partnership. And if he can't do it on the 15th, then maybe he'll do it on another day. But I have to have open communication and no attachment to our overall agenda. If I get too attached to the agenda of his mission and purpose of, you're an ambassador, you've got to be there on the 15th, people are expecting it, it's not fair to him, because being our best selves, people, as with other species, we have our good days and bad days. Our best looks different every single day. And there's going to be a day he can pull off at 25 miles when he's feeling tip-top best, and then his best on other days are going to be 3 or 4 miles. It's like us. Some days, man, we're on the money in whatever we do. And that's the best of the best. And then we have other days that we're sick or we're tired or we're emotionally spent, and we have to be satisfied and open to what our best is that day and release the expectations in order to have that inner peace. And people ask me all the time, why is it most of the time you're so peaceful? That's part of it. Daily communication. I'll give dog example. Balder's the same way. He's 9 years old now. There are days that I have to look at his supplements. Balder's like a giant chemistry set. He's my special needs East German Shepherd. He's magnificent. He's at a great weight right now. You guys are seeing the photos on Facebook. He's actually almost a bit of a fatty. But after years of struggling with his ulcers, and he's such an emotional creature that he's developed. His emotional source of disease with ulcers is what can't he stomach. He's seen a lot in my life he can't stomach. So I don't blame him, and we both have very similar issues. So some days his supplements look very different from other days. Some days his food looks very different from other days. I have to have open communication every day with him in order to take care of him appropriately and for us to be our best. Now, animal communication also includes humans. Humans are animals. We're a mammal. And so when I started this work, I did not want to work with human beings. And humans, I found, as a child, I felt rejected all the time. I was one of what they call an indigo child. You can look that up. And indigos, when they're not in the proper environment, other children that are non-indigos will prey upon them despite the intelligence, despite all the gifts. And I don't like anything that looks different from what they are. So as an indigo, there was just such a lack of knowing about it that my parents didn't know how to support me, and I was beat up, bullied all the time by myself. And the only solace I had was with other species. So kind of like a rescued dog or a rescued animal of some sort, I really didn't trust humanity. I felt humanity was a very, very dangerous animal, a very unkind animal. I only have 3 teachers from preschool to university that I can remember that saw me for what I was and supported me, and then got me to the place where I was tested and the genius level intelligence, and explained the ADD that I had, that indigos don't do well with chemicals, and got me off all the bad food. And then my brain started working better because I actually could have clarity, because sensitive people that are indigos, their bodies reject chemicals more than the average individual. Remove the chemicals, remove the sugar, remove the complicated or complex carbohydrates, all that stuff, or I probably just said that wrong, fake, the processed foods. And you get individuals that will function at a much higher level. All humans will function higher, but indigos in particular. So the ones that suffer from ADD, ADHD, the cleaner you feed them, the better off they're going to be without medication. I never had medication. I just had to eat clean, and I get made fun of for it sometimes, but then people look at me, 50 this year, and while I am aging, I'm aging appropriately. I don't look too old for my age. I don't look too young for my age. I am my age, and I have a glow. I have a health about me because I choose to eat appropriately, and I choose to stay away from toxic chemicals. So when I say animal communication, I'll circle back around. Everything is connected. That means communicating with yourself. Do you know, daily I have to adjust my supplements. Daily I adjust my diet. I have to learn how to listen to what my body needs when it needs it, not just stuff my face with something because I need food. It's like you have to be thoughtful about all of it, thoughtful about your life, present with your life. And if your life includes animal companions, maybe the gateway for you becoming more awake, more aware, more connected is to do animal communication healing session with me, with your dog, your cat, your bird, your snake, whatever, so that you start to do it with your animal companions, and then inevitably you will see the paradox. If you do it with them and don't do it for yourself and don't do it with your kids and don't do it with your loved ones, we're being inconsistent. Consistency is the name of the game. Consistency and connection and awareness, presence, functioning from love and confidence versus ego and fear. A lot of people who do what I do, or think they do what I do, you have to have an uber confidence, because you have to really know that this is real, and you have to be able to educate people so that they come to work with you, right? So you need that uber confidence so that people will come and work with you, right? Because they have to believe it, because it's not mainstream. Energy medicine is still kind of off the map. It's more accepted than ever before, but still off the map. And so uber confidence is sometimes mistaken for having ego and being fear-driven. Note the language that people use. Note the context that they frame. And if you see the ego in the language, in how they speak and communicate, then you're not quite dealing with an individual that really kind of knows what they're doing. So, a lot of people, when they listen to me, they're like, God, you've been doing this for 20 years and you've never been wrong. It's a nice title to have, or a nice record to have, but every time I do a session, I go in going, I've got to be my best to help this person, to help this animal, to help this child, because a mistake on my part could be very costly for the people I'm working with. Because I've worked with terminal illnesses, cancers of all kinds, ALS, MS, fibromyalgia, bipolar disorder, people who are suicidal, anxiety disorders, depression. I've worked with people and kids that if I say the wrong thing, you could push somebody right over the edge. I give the wrong advice on what to search for with medical practices, holistic and Western. I could cost somebody their life. So for me, there is a uber drive to always be my best, to always be clear and devoid of the ego, because I know the ego is what will cause the problems, that I won't be getting the information correctly. So that's why when people tell me, oh, you're a guru, I run from that word. Most people that tack on that guru word have problems with ego. So I kind of avoid all that. I've heard the word master approach towards me, and I'm like, oh, don't call me that. I'm here learning like everybody else. Kind of take my lead from the Dalai Lama on that. If that man calls himself a simple monk who's still learning with everybody else, trust me, I'm raising my hand. I'm simpler than he is. So work with truly humble people. They know they're good and they perform at their best, but they're humble at the same time. So with animal communication, like with people, it must be a daily practice. You must use emotional literacy, communication skills. What's a communication skill? Active listening is a communication skill. How many clients will say, well, what the hell is that? And I'm like, wow, okay, it should be taught in school. Active listening is when someone says something to you and you want to make sure that you heard them properly, A. B, by doing this technique, you will let them know that you actually heard them properly, and they will be overjoyed that you're actually listening. And 3, you will know that you heard the person properly. And if there's any misunderstanding about what they said to you, you've given them the opportunity to say, oh no, you misunderstand me. I actually mean this. So, what is active listening? Someone says something to you. You don't parrot. Big no-no. You don't parrot, meaning use the same words at them of what they said. You paraphrase what they've said to you and say, I just want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. And then it achieves those 3 things I just said. And then your communication becomes so much more richer, so much more positive. Now, that technique I use with animals. That's part of emotional literacy for animals, ELA, which I'm the only one who coins that phrase, working with animals. And I use communication skills. When I studied human behavior, human psychology, communication skills, I then applied it to my understanding of animal psychology, behavior, as well as species, breed, male or female, and individual personality, and life experience. You've got to be able to connect all that in order to effectively communicate with an animal. And yes, they lie. They lie like humans. Or they can be in delusion. I won't say it as like a lie, but they can be in delusion, just like we can. They can say, I'm fine. I don't need any help. Yeah, right. That's why you vomit every day. Shut up and let me help you. Because they want to fix themselves. You know, animals have egos too. Animals have their hang-ups too. They're here learning. And typically, they will, like attracts like. It's not, if you ever have an animal communicator or a healer or whoever say to you, well, your dog is anxious because you're anxious and you've caused the problem. Oy, talk about adding guilt. Guilt doesn't get anyone anywhere. Fear motivating someone doesn't get you anywhere with them. As a matter of fact, you get way less trying to fear motivate people. What you do is create understanding, inform them that like attracts like. So the very issues of, say, anxiety and fear that you deal with, you've attracted a being that has the same issue. Not because you're being punished or the dog's being punished, but because in the dog going through what they're going through, you're being given the opportunity to also help yourself. It's an opportunity to help self. It's a healing opportunity. And when you work with the right person like me, instead of it becoming a, what you're doing wrong, oh God, talk about throwing people into emotional reaction. People and animals, same thing. When I'm trying to help an animal change behaviors that could cost them their lives, I don't use fear. I don't wag my finger at them. You're doing wrong. You're blah, blah, blah. Oh, God. Talk about, okay, what is emotional reaction in animals and in human? I'll use a human as the example and then put it in the context of an animal and you'll get it. So in a human, when they're calm, their brain is half logic and half emotional. Okay? When you put someone into emotional reaction, you've told them they're wrong or challenged an ideology or dogma that they really believe in. And instead of listening, they stop listening. Their brain goes from half logic, half emotional to the logic going like about this much, and the rest is explosive emotional reaction. Whether it's silently explosive or verbally explosive, it's the same thing. And what is the result of that? Shut down. They're not going to listen to you. You just lost your audience. So when you're dealing with sensitive topics that a dog or a cat or a horse is getting a payoff from a certain negative behavior or needs to transform a certain negative behavior, you wagging your finger telling them they're wrong or you're causing harm to your dog parent, fear motivation, chastisement. I always start with animals with, here's what you're doing well. Here's how you're a great dog. And then the dog's listening to me. I can see it in my mind's eye. They're listening and they're like, okay, this is what I do well. Okay, and I'm like, these are the behaviors you need to keep doing because they work really well for you. Now, you and your mom have been having some trouble, or your dad, and they'll say yes. And I'll say, okay, so what can you do differently? How can I help you? What do you need me to communicate to your pet parent, your pet guardian, however you want to call a person in an animal's life? What can I communicate to them that that they need to know about you that's like causing, the rub? And how do we do things differently in order for you guys to support each other? And then the animal goes, oh, so it's not all my fault. No. It's not about fault or blame or right or wrong. It's about how do you facilitate change that happens from within. Like when I work with drug addicts and alcoholics, if you think I'm wagging my finger at what they need to do, they've been coached out the yin-yang. If they've been in programs and facilities, which by the time they come to me, they've been through it all. And I'm referred to by a couple of institutions as an external resource for people to work with alcohol and addictions. Because the work that I do is not about the coaching of or food issues when you overeat. or even bulimia, stuff, any kind of behavioral issue that are challenges for humans and animals. And I'll say, what are you doing well and what can we do differently? And it's not about fault. It's just about what you can do differently. And we would all do it. And then the energy that I do, the work called connected energy, it goes into the subconscious on a subtle frequency, which then helps the individual change from within. I am not the external force going, no, 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 no. I am the work that I do, I am facilitating their internal change, them making the conscious choice, free will, folks, free will is everything. They're making the free will choice to improve their lives. And because it's their idea and it's motivated from within, that's where we get the behavior change. That's when it happens. If you're trying to impose your will with training, behavior, or someone talking at your pet, nothing will ever go right. And then you'll say, I've tried everything, nothing's working. This is a bad dog, or a bad horse, or a bad duck, whatever. I've worked with it all, all of them. I always assume a positive intent. I don't assume a bad animal, ever. What I assume is life has been difficult for the individual I'm dealing with, whether it's a person, whether it's an animal, whether it's a fish, whether it's a tree, because all life is sentient. So that is my connected live for today. Know that animal communication is a daily practice, and it has to be practiced with all the points that I've hit during this this connected live. And the proof is always in the pudding. I have people up there that are skeptics that want to laugh at this. I have a 2-year-old, over 100-pound German Shepherd Thor who was deemed aggressive, who is a doll baby in under 2 months. I have a 100-pound East German Shepherd who is special needs, who should have been dead 3 or 4 times, by working with top vets who, only for my work and in collaboration with some brilliant vets, but the vets will tell you it was my work and my way of being that pulled them through. Baldor. Top vets in the industry, some of them teaching at University of Pennsylvania. So people who laugh at me, you can suck it. Because then I have 3 horses from 3 different environments, from a 29-year-old horribly abused horse that I was told was going to kill me, to who is my best friend now, to Jack, who can be a little volatile because of his youth, has never tried to dump me, he's 4 years old, to William, who experienced terrible abuse at the hands of somebody in Los Angeles, and he's 4, and he could be a nasty piece of work if he wanted to. So my way of doing things is not just my 20 years of working and my testimonials. It's also within my own animals and my personal relationships, the CEOs I work with, the companies I have helped guide, the legal cases I have helped guide that but for me would have turned out very differently. So anyone who wants to laugh at this, again, you can suck it, because the proof is in the pudding and I have a platinum reputation. So I get serious about it because it's my mission and purpose. It's my passion. I speak 3 languages. I was recruited actually to the State Department's Foreign Service at the age of 21 when I graduated from college. I ended up working for a top 10 pharmaceutical ad agency. I am university educated. I attended law school, not for me, but could have been very good at it. I was told by my constitutional professor, who's begged me not to leave school, but it was just not for me, so I had a good mind for it. So this is not just someone who came out of high school with a gift. This is something that I really worked hard on and didn't come out professionally until I could do it professionally and full-time. So connectedenergyhealing.com is where you can find me. And I look forward to working with whoever comes and helps me, and I hope that you guys spread this message to everybody that you can. Work with a qualified person who does animal communication like I do. I always recommend myself because I know there's nobody else doing it the way I do. There are other effective people out there, but they don't do it at this level. I work on the 3 levels of the energetic, the emotional source of disease, and the physical. And I am familiar with Western medicine as well as holistic medicine, and I'm able to connect everything to kind of create the change that people need. Thanks again, everybody. You all have a great day, and please join me next time. Thank you.